So welcome to this meeting, to the Hazards Campaign Clean Air Day event. My name is Janet Newsham, and I'm the chair of the Hazards Campaign and coordinator at Greater Manchester Hazards Centre. So Clean Air Day is the UK largest air pollution campaign. Hundreds of events are taking place or have taken place across the UK. It's coordinated by a global action plan and incorporates all sorts of different campaigns. So we've been doing something on this for the last few years, just to try and make sure that workers are involved in the Clean Air Day and that they get to know what's going on. So if you look on the website of Global Action Plan, you'll see, or Clean Air Day, you'll see things like Clean Air Night, where they're campaigning on the pollution caused by wood burning. There's Clean Air Workplaces, which I suppose is what we are, this sort of event will come under. We've been trying to highlight actions for workers to take around air pollution caused by work and the impact on workers, and especially indoor air pollution, which seems to have been generally forgotten, I think, in the whole campaigning work. This year, for International Workers' Memorial Day, the focus on it was climate crisis and its impact on workers. And in TUCAN, we produced a guide for workers, and we're going to talk about that this evening. So this was on top of the work that we'd already carried out, trying to give workers actions around air pollution. And this document tonight is a bit more focused, a lot more detail. It's been welcomed by, any of the events that I've taken part in over the last few weeks. And I think a number of us, Hilda and Graham and Mick, that's on the call, have also taken part in events around the document. And certainly, people have welcomed it. So Graham's been, in particular, been working on a document which we hope is going to be ready in the next few weeks for the new government. And it's looking at the sorts of things we need to lobby them on around air pollution, indoor air pollution. And he's also, with the support of the likes of Sarah Woolley, who's the General Secretary of the Bakers Union, and Shelley Asquith, who's the Health and Safety Officer for the TUC, have been producing a film which is going to be released hopefully tomorrow, and we're going to see a sneak preview of it tonight, and it'll be available for you to use in workplaces, on events, and hopefully gives an idea of things that workers that we could do in workplaces. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Hilda, who's produced this fantastic document with Mick. She's going to go through the document with you, and then we're going to play the film, and Graham can introduce that, and then we'll open it up for sort of general discussion, if that's okay. So over to you, Hilda.
Okay, is that all right? Can you hear me, and can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's great. I'm just going to do this fairly quickly because I think it's more important that we have a bit of a discussion about this. So I'm going to go through the sort of document and what it covers and some of the issues and challenges that we face and the barriers and things we can do in workplaces and things we have to campaign for still outside of workplaces in terms of the law and standards and enforcement to actually back us up, and how this links in with climate change. But as Janet has said, it's all about making sure that when we're talking about air pollution, workers aren't left out. Workers are almost always left out of all of these sort of things, and yet workers are exposed first, they're often exposed worst, and they're considered last, and the protections that we have are often less than the public or other people have. And so it's really, really important that we all do our bit to try and put indoor workplace air pollution on the map, and that we develop a real campaign and a real pressure and a force and demand for actually change, and that we try to clean up the air in our workplaces, which is actually making us really sick. So I put in the chat the links to the flyer for this workers' guide to action and to the workers' guide itself. And I'm just going to go through these bits. As Janet has said, lots of people have been involved in this, who've been working with TUCAN, the Trade Union Clean Air Network, for many years. It's about Janet and others set it up in about 2018, I think. And we're really grateful for the Trade Union Health and Safety specialists who've provided support and action information. As Janet said, I welcome this, and Graham and Janet have played their role in this, and I particularly like to thank Mick Holder for the work that he did on this. This guide, we tried to make this guide fairly detailed so that workers, safety reps particularly, have all the information they actually need to take action, and lots of backup and references and links to other sources to actually help them when you come up against difficulties. Okay, so let's have a look. Oh, is that working? Why isn't that working? Why isn't that working? Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's the flyer there, and that's really quite good. You stick that on your notice boards. It's got a QR code to the full document, tells you what it wanted. It's really, that's really a good idea. Right, how did I do that then? Sorry, I managed to move it on and then I don't quite, oh, there we are. Okay, so basically we live and work in a toxic soup, and indoor air is a real problem. Mostly when we're talking about air pollution, people are focusing on what's going on outside, but the air inside is just air that's coming from the outside, and then pollution from the building, the fixtures, the furniture, from the work activity, and from the people itself has actually been added to that. So indoor air can be 2 to 5 times more polluted than outdoor air. And it's incredibly important. As workers, we spend hours of our life in our workplaces breathing this air. And we're very worried, we're all worried about clean water, although it's difficult to talk about clean water now, when we know that the government has allowed privatized water companies to pump sewage into our rivers and our seas and contaminate absolutely everything. But we are concerned about water, and we wouldn't drink dirty water, but we're actually breathing dirty air. And although you only drink a couple of litres of water a day, you actually breathe in about 11,000 litres of air a day. So whatever's in that air is going to affect you badly. And we know that about 30 to 40,000 extra deaths are caused by air pollution, and that's mostly based on outdoor pollution. We know that about 50,000 workers die from work-related illnesses, cancers, lung and heart disease, and many of them, some are caused by stress, some are caused by other issues, but many of them are caused by the chemicals and the dust and the things that are in the air. And on top of that, millions and millions of people are made really ill by the air that they're exposed to at work. So that indoor air contains absolutely everything: gases, fumes, particles, biological agents, cancers, mutagens, all those sort of things that I'm listing there. I'm not going to go through them all. Viruses like COVID and bacteria and fungal spores, all those sorts of things. So that all that stuff is in the air, and most of it is invisible because things have to be quite small for us to actually inhale and be harmful to us. So most of the things that we inhale, whether they're gases or fumes or biological agents, or whether they're micro or nano particles of carbon or plastic or whatever, dust or whatever you want to call it, they're mostly sort of invisible. And then we've got poor ventilation. If you've got a high carbon dioxide level and pollutant levels in your workplace, that's going to make you very ill. The more people there are in a workplace and the worse the ventilation, then the higher the carbon dioxide level will be. So you can judge the level of ventilation by how much carbon dioxide is there. And that's obviously going to be a problem. But we now know that high carbon dioxide levels in their own right are a problem. They damage our concentration, they damage our thinking. And we also know now from some very recent research by a guy called Hadrell, that the more carbon dioxide there is in the air, the longer pathogens like COVID and others that are in the air, the longer they will survive. The more carbon dioxide in the air, the longer they survive in the air, and therefore the longer that they are infectious. So carbon dioxide in itself is a problem, as well as an indicator. The higher the carbon dioxide level, the worse the ventilation. And we have a problem. We don't really have very clear indoor air quality standards, and we don't have any sort of level of strict enforcement. So this is all making us ill, causing sickness absence, loss of money. Many people don't get sick pay. It's causing people to lose their jobs and their livelihoods and their health and their lives. We're still, huge number of people have shorter, sicker lives. Many people are dying from the air pollution that they're exposed to at work. And air pollution makes all other illnesses worse, and it increases our susceptibility to other illnesses and pollutants. And it causes a huge range of illnesses, which I'm not going to go into there, but you can see them, and in the guide you can read them in more detail. And the other issue is that this is all very much about equality. The poorer you are, the lower your wages, the more likely you are to live next to very busy, highly polluting roads, the more likely you are to live next to polluting industries or old polluting work sites. And therefore, the more likely you are to be made ill. So the poorer you are, the blacker you are, minority and ethnic workers, women, people who are already clinically vulnerable, sick and disabled, and other disadvantaged groups are the most badly affected. Okay, let's see, going on again. Right, it's just purely by accident. I don't quite know why that's working. Okay, size matters as far as the particles in the air go. As they're not all just dust. Graham's very keen on calling them what they are, which is particulate matter. How harmful the particles are really depends on their size, and the smaller they are, the more harmful they are. Anything under a 100th millionth of a meter can be inhaled, breathed in through your nose, but a lot of the bigger particles over 10 microns get filtered out in your nose and throat. The stuff below that gets into your lungs, and the very smaller parts get deep into your lungs. So when you get down to PM 2.5 millionths of a meter, they can get right down into the air sacs of the lung and get absorbed across the lung lining into the blood system, and then they get everywhere in your body. They can get across into the brain, they can get across into developing fetus, they can get to every organ and every system in your body. They're in experiments, they haven't found any male testes that haven't had plastic particles in them, and they haven't found any penises that haven't, when they've been looking for them, that haven't got plastic particles in them. These things can get absolutely everywhere, and they can cause huge amounts of damage. WHO says that there is no safe level of the PM 2.5 micron particles, and so those are, some of the most dangerous particles in air pollution that we really have to do something about. Okay. Oh, I've gone too far, I think. There we go. So what the guide looks at is what air pollution does, how it causes harm, where does it come from at work, and we look at a range of different workplaces and suggest the likely pollutants that might be there. And then we look at the control of air pollution, the law, the standards and enforcement, and ventilation and a range of other things. And there are clear laws that should help us in this. They're not strict enough, they're not strictly enforced enough. We need stronger standards, we need better enforcement, but we have got something there and we do have to use it. And one of the main laws is COSH, the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health regulations. There's also the Safety Reps and Safety Committees regulation, which give safety reps enormous amounts of rights and employers' obligations to them to make workplaces safer and healthier. And there's the Workplace Health, Safety and Welfare regulations, which cover ventilation. And there's also things like the provision and use of work equipment, which will cover ventilation systems, the personal protection equipment regulations, and so on. And the most important thing under the COSH regulations is to identify all the substances arising or used at work and to assess whether they're harmful to workers' health. If they are harmful at all, then your employer is under a duty to use the COSH control hierarchy, and they should look at eliminating or substituting with safer substances. This is really, really important. It's the part of COSH that's very powerful, but that is very poorly enforced. And it really must be looked at. It is something that the law requires. And so if substances that you're using at work to make things or to do things are identified as being harmful to health, then your employer is under a duty to look at whether they can do something about that and eliminate them. For example, eliminating using petrol and diesel vehicles, substituting with electric vehicles, or not doing a job at all, or substituting a safer substance. And then if they can't do that, if they can't eliminate them, they've got to use engineering or other controls to prevent exposure of workers, isolating, enclosing the harmful processes, local exhaust ventilation, and then only as a last resort can they use personal protective equipment. So all of these things are very, very important. They're not strictly enforced enough, but they're there, and there's things that we have to use. We have to try and use what we've got as much as we can. But there are problems in this, in that we don't have safe enough standards to hold our employers to. And there's a table up there on the right showing the difference in the ambient outdoor air pollution legal levels, the UK and the WO guidelines, which are much better, and then the UK COSH regs work exposure limits, which you can see are less safe than the ones for outside. There are reasons for that, because they're based on a different group of people in a short period of time and all the rest of it. But it is very much a case that workers are protected far less than other groups of people, and that there isn't a set limit for PM 2.5s under workplace regulations. The limits are for inhalable dust and respirable dust, which isn't quite the same thing, and it doesn't protect workers enough. And that's something that, you know, Graham is dealing with in terms of a briefing for changes that we need the new government to do. If you look at the diagram underneath, you'll just see a very quick comparison. The hand lens outside of the workplace and inside the workplace, and you can see that the standards allowed for outside are much safer than the ones allowed for workers. Workers can be exposed to far more particles than outside, and that's obviously not good for us. So what can we do about all these sorts of things? We can try and make sure that we know what's going on in our workplace, that we make our employers monitor the ventilation systems, make sure that they're providing enough air, that they're diluting, dispersing and removing pollutants. And we can carry out monitoring for this. We can check the ventilation by monitoring CO2 levels. That's the Aranet monitor on the Aranet 4 monitor is monitoring CO2 there. And the Qingping monitor on the right is monitoring PM 2.5s. And you can see the levels at the top are very, very poor, and the levels underneath are actually much better. And the document explains what we're really looking at. We're looking for CO2 levels that are 800 parts per million or less. And when we're looking at the parts per million of 2.5 micron particles, we're looking at things that are as near to zero as possible. And then we're looking for good ventilation. Our standards in the workplace health, safety and welfare regulations are not really good enough. The document explains those and explains what the HSE guidance is at the moment, which we should at least be striving to ensure we get. But lots of work being done by global experts, including the table at the left there, shows what we now consider to be good ventilation, better and best. And it gives those ventilation rates in air changes per hour. So 4 is good, 6 is better, over 6 is best. And then the number of litres per second per person of ventilation is on the right, and good would be 10 litres per second per person. And that would mean that would keep the CO2 level at under 800 parts per million. And that would be good. But to prevent airborne infection, we now know, and the Lancet document here supports this, that we would need at least 14 or 15 litres per second per person. So that would be best. And if you can't get those sort of levels of ventilation, then you have to look at adding supplementary filtration. And maybe you should do that anyway, because the ventilation only brings in fresh air, removes this carbon dioxide, brings in more oxygen, removes some of the pollutants. But if the air outside is polluted, then it's not doing that, and we might need to be filtering that air. And so the photograph on the bottom from an NEU conference just shows two commercial HEPA filters, high efficiency particulate air filters on the right, which NEU has bought to make sure that its conferences are safe. They filter out the very small PM 2.5 and below particles. And then on the left is a do-it-yourself filter, a MERV filter, which is it is similar but much cheaper, and it draws much more air through and filters it. And both of those methods will remove huge amounts of particles from the air and make it safer from airborne air pollution, airborne pathogens, but also safer from the PM 2.5 particles, which are doing us so much harm. And there's huge amounts of evidence that shows that if we can remove the particles from the air, it makes us all healthier, it reduces sickness absence, it improves our concentration, improves our thinking. There's lots of research, especially in schools, that show how badly children do in highly polluted areas, which again is the equality issue, because poorer, more disadvantaged children will live and go to school in areas that have far more particulates in the air. So these sorts of filtration systems to help us to deal with the pollution in the air are really important to look at. And the Workers' Guide actually helps you to look at all of those. And there's a very good scheme going to take place in London soon, where the mayor has pledged that he will get air filters into the most highly polluted schools over the next year. And I think that's something to watch, but it's something we should be demanding everywhere, and it's something we should be demanding in our workplaces too. Okay, right. So then the document goes on, and I'm not going to go through this in any detail. The document then goes on, having explained all the issues which you need to understand, so that when you say to your employers, well, this is a problem and this is what we want, and they come back with, oh, well, this, or oh, well, that, you've got a bit more information to actually tackle them and to actually challenge them. And then the actions just take you through how you should approach it, talking to your colleagues, trying to build up your case, asking your employers for the information, for the monitoring. They can't say everything's all right if they can't tell you what you're exposed to, if they haven't got the results of what you're exposed to, if they haven't carried out the air monitoring, if they haven't done the COSH assessment, if they can't show you what the ventilation system is actually providing. So it goes through all of that, and that's really important. And then it tells you, how to check that, what you're actually looking for, what are the minimal levels you should accept. And looks at infectious airborne diseases, which are really important. We know that COVID is still a huge and enormous problem. It is damaging workers' lives enormously. It is causing long COVID, probably about 2 million people with long COVID. It's forcing workers out of work because they can't work anymore, forcing them into poverty. Those that are continuing to work are getting repeatedly infected, and then they are susceptible to all sorts of other infections, and they're developing all sorts of other long-term diseases. And then it talks about respiratory personal protective equipment, which is essential when the airborne pollution cannot be reduced to a reasonable level in many of our workplaces. That is absolutely essential. Until things can be sorted out and made better, it is essential that all of that is considered, and the right respiratory protection, the FFP2 and 3 masks are actually used. So that's what the document does. And that's as much as I really want to say. There's lots of links there and things that you can actually do. And we all hope that that is really useful for you.
Thank you so much, Hilda. That was fantastic. And would you mind posting the link again in the chat, because there were some people that joined after the link was posted, and then they can see that. So thanks for that, and we'll come back and ask, see if there's any questions afterwards. Graham, should I show the film and then you can introduce it afterwards? Hang on, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, that would probably be the best way of doing it. So it's
Okay.
yeah, just to say, it's about 10 minutes. It comes in at 10 minutes. This film. So yeah, if we watch it, and then I could just say a few words, and then be really interested to get any feedback or comments.
Right, thank you very much. And so hopefully it's going to work. I have tested it, and that's the fatal words to say I've tested it before I come on. We'll have a go at that.
No sound, Janet.
Yeah, do you want to take it back to the beginning again?
Right, I can hear sound. So I'll have another go.
We couldn't.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what's happened there. Right, I'll have another go and see if we can get it on sound again. Okay.
That's fine.
The Trade Union Clean Air Network was set up by the Hazards Campaign and the Greener Jobs Alliance in 2019, and the main purpose was to support trade unions who wanted to raise awareness of the issue of air pollution in the workplace and in their communities.
So the occupational exposures which many professions experience is something which requires much more attention.
So trade unions have to be at the heart of any consultations when it comes to cleaning up the air that we're breathing in.
And employers need that force from them to know that they have to do it, not that they should do it.
Trade Union Clean Air Networks produced this film because we want to highlight the issue of occupational indoor air pollution, which we feel is being very neglected and a cause of real concern, not just for the public, but particularly for workers employed in some of these indoor environments.
Now, this event has been put together by Battersea and Wandsworth Trade Union Council, which is the local branch of the TUC, and the Trade Union Clean Air Network. And the reason why we've chosen Tooting is because we've been involved in monitoring the air pollution in this area for a number of years now.
Yeah, the focus has been primarily on outdoor air pollution and seeing this as a public health issue. Now, that's important, but what we want to do is actually make sure that the focus needs to be also on indoor air pollution and air pollution as an occupational health issue. So in other words, not just public health, but occupational health, and not just outdoor air pollution, but indoor air pollution as well.
So the current state of legal standards on indoor air pollution are rather inadequate. The occupational indoor air quality standards were set many years ago, and in the interim period, of course, we have accumulated an awful lot better understanding of the links between poor air quality and poor health, and as a consequence we really need to tighten up those standards. And in the indoor setting in public places, you know, we really don't have any guidance at all. So the Chief Medical Officer in the UK, Professor Chris Whitty, in his annual report back in 2022, he took exposure to air pollution and its health consequences as the focus of the work. And the conclusion from that piece of work was that there was inadequate evidence available to support the exposure that we're getting in indoor environments, in our public buildings, for example, and even in our homes. All these instances where people are being exposed to outdoor pollution is clearly bad. But when you consider that in many occupations in indoor settings, people are being exposed to as much air pollution, and yet we don't know about it because we're not monitoring indoors. So commercial cooking is a problem from the concentration of these tiny particles, PM2.5, which they emit as part of the process. And as you have mentioned, in this indoor market, the concentrations were extremely high indeed. Now that is a cooking aerosol. It's not diesel coming from a tailpipe, or it's not microparticles coming from a tire in a vehicle. It's a different type of particle. And the million-dollar question is that type of particle as dangerous to our health as we know diesel from a tailpipe is?
We know that indoor air pollution is an occupational health risk. It can cause things like asthma, other respiratory illnesses, or worse. It depends what we're breathing in. It could be black mold, it could be asbestos fibres from the building, it could be airborne viruses like COVID. There are so many invisible risks that can affect and cause long or short-term health problems for workers. But the quality of the air filling our lungs can cause other problems as well. If it's poor quality air we're breathing in, it can make us tired, it can make us less alert, and that can create other safety risks in all sorts of different jobs. The current legal framework on indoor air pollution isn't good enough. We need standards so that employees have got a benchmark, and we need regular quality monitoring to become the norm. But we also need to update the existing laws that we've got. So things like COSH, things like workplace exposure limits. We know so much more about air quality since those protections were introduced, so it's about time they were updated. Well, trade union health and safety reps have already got the right to carry out workplace safety inspections, and that ought to include monitoring the air quality indoors and outdoors wherever workers are spending their time. They can do that, and they can report concerns to the employer or even to the safety regulator. But we want safety reps to have more rights, have those rights extended. We want them to have the right to carry out an inspection in any site within a supply chain, in any workplace where they've got members. Trade unions have also got a really important role in this space to make this issue more publicly known, to raise awareness amongst the community, to highlight the issue to perhaps workers who aren't in unions, but also parents groups, community activists that might not be aware that the air that they're breathing in can be a toxic hazard and can create long and short-term health problems. So there's a lot of campaigning opportunity around this.
So the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union have for years had a very firm stance on being anti-fracking. We want to be greener, our industry needs to be greener, but it's not until the last 5 or 6 years that we've really ramped up the work that we've done around climate change and the importance of it being a trade union issue. In short, I don't think the air pollution in the food sector is being adequately addressed by employers and enforcement bodies. Some employers are doing a far better job than others, but that typically is the really big companies, the national, multinational ones that have got the resources and the funds to do that. But the small and medium-sized businesses that maybe haven't got, £60,000 to put an air filtration system in, they're the ones where our members are most at risk. And for some of them, it's not for the want of trying, they just haven't got the resources to do that. In terms of the enforcement bodies, I don't believe that they've got enough teeth to go in and deal with issues. Our industry has been rife for longer than I've been alive with dust exposure from flour and other ingredients, and that's still an issue. Although there are things in place, there are new masks, there's new extraction systems that can be utilised, it's certainly not uniformed across the whole industry. My advice to reps and activists, not only in the BFAW but to all movement reps and activists, if you want to be more involved and to take action and find out more about what you can do around air pollution, not only in your workplace but in your communities, to go to the Greener Jobs Alliance website, have a look at the Trade Union Clean Air Network information and resources. There is a fantastic checklist in there that you can use as a base to what you start doing, but also then bring it up in your health and safety meetings, bring it up with your local councillors that you've got concerns, and work through those processes as well.
We began measuring air pollution standards in Tooting over 10 years ago, but more recently we've realised that the indoor markets in Tooting are the source of major air pollution issues. What we've discovered is that exposure levels for particulate matter can be as high as up to 4,000 micrograms per cubic metre. Now what that means is that it can be at least 200 times the exposure levels out on the high street. We've used Tooting Market as a case study for this film because we've been working closely with the market owners and with the council to try and achieve a solution to this problem. We want to make it clear we don't want the market to close. It's an important social hub, and more importantly, it's also an important source of local jobs. So we feel that working with the trade union movement and the community is going to be vital for making sure that this public space does stay open and continues to function effectively.
Okay, thank you. Oh, hang on.
Hey, Jack, should we start the discussion? Oh, you're muted now.
Are you struggling, Janet? Can you not?
You're on mute, Janet.
Don't do it, Janet. Don't jump. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
We should just carry on, Graham, perhaps.
Yeah, okay. Well, just to kick it off, to say, interested to get your thoughts on this, but just to say, by way of a couple of caveats, that the film, was put together in a bit of a rush. Obviously, we didn't have a huge amount of footage that we could call upon to try and mix it up a bit. And because it relied on voluntary labour, my son to do the filming, and to hear who's the secretary of the Green Jobs Alliance, his nephew to do the editing. So it has been brought out very quickly. Still needs a little bit of editing. So the running time is about 10 minutes. There's stuff in there where it scrolls through the Extinction Rebellion manifesto that doesn't really need to be there. So yeah, that's the film, which is, as Hilda indicated, is the second part of this trilogy of resources that we aim to produce. So the first one we covered in the first part of this meeting. This is the film. We'll have that available for people as from tomorrow, with a direct embedded link on the TUCAN part of the Greener Jobs Alliance website, and there'll be a flyer that can be emailed and circulated with a summary of it, as a way of promoting it in trade union branches and in communities, because that's the plan. I mean, the case study in this film wasn't a workplace. Well, it was a workplace, but it wasn't a trade union organised workplace. But it was an example of where unions were going beyond their own workplaces, in this case Battersea and Wandsworth TUC, to try and address an issue which had come to our attention, and looking at how to engage with the owners of the market, and particularly with the local authority, who recognise this problem, but are completely hamstrung by the fact that there is nothing in the way of a legal standard that they can enforce at this stage. So, it's early days. We'll see what progress we make in terms of the control measures that some have been identified and some still need to be worked on. But clearly, this isn't an overnight fix. But we thought it would be good to actually have, a case study in there rather than just talk around the issue. So that's a bit more background on the film. But if anyone's got any thoughts and comments on it, I think I can't ask the guy doing the editing to make any more substantial changes, because I've been a bit of a pain in the arse by keep coming back to him and saying, oh, perhaps we could shift this, do that, this, that, and the other. So not quite as easy as a document to revise and review, but certainly something which I'd like some feedback on, and whether you think it's something that you could find useful in a community space or in your trade union branch or wherever.
Yeah, thanks very much, Graham. That's excellent. I thought it was really useful because it gave clearly about how you make the invisible visible, and the importance of all that. On top of the document, to have that film. I think it's certainly something that's watchable, isn't it? By getting members to start to think about some of the issues. So throw it open to any questions or comments. Anybody like to make a comment? Yeah, Mick.
Great stuff, Graham. Thank you very much. People are asking in the in the chat, where is it? How can they find it? What are your plans for the launch, etc., etc.? So perhaps if you could let people know that'd be great.
Yeah, it's now on a private Facebook, a private YouTube link. But the plan is to, as from tomorrow, when these final little changes have been made, to put it into a dedicated link on the TUCAN part of the website. So, what I can do as soon as that's been completed, hopefully by this time tomorrow at the latest, we could send that out to Janet, if that's okay, and then certainly circulate it to everyone who signed up for this meeting, and it will go out more widely across different unions and all of the people on the, for example, the Greener Jobs Alliance mailing list as well. So that's the intention, and hopefully it will have a decent shelf life. It was brought out for Clean Air Day, but I think it could still serve a purpose in a number of ways. I mean, I think we'd certainly want to make it available for people who haven't seen it at Hazards Conference, perhaps. But there are a number of events, coming up where I think it could actually serve a purpose.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll be circulating all the links that are in the chat and the link to the film after the event to anybody that's registered. But I absolutely would show it at Hazards Conference. I think that'd be a really good place to show as part of the Hazards Conference. Anybody who's not signed up for the Hazards Conference, it's an opportunity for you to meet up with other safety reps. It's held at Keele University at the end of August, beginning of September. Over the weekend, Graham will be there, and others will be there that are here. And we've got a session on climate and crisis and workers and air pollution. So hopefully that you'll see it again there, but you'll be able to talk to others around those issues in a bit more detail. Leslie.
Hiya, Janet. I think my camera might have sprung into action before. I know it's gone off again. I don't know. I did appear bobbing around like each whale. I could see myself. I don't know what happened. It's gone off again now. Anyway, just wanted to say, Graham, I think that's really, I like that film. I think it's really good, and I think it just serves as a conversation starter and raising awareness for our members as well. And we are going to run a little campaign now based around this from the Royal College of Midwives. I think you spoke at the Yorkshire and Humber climate group last week, was it at the SPF or somewhere? I can't, but one of our organisers was there, Gusty, and she contacted me yesterday and said, do we know about TUCAN? And I said, yes, we do. I always talk to our new reps about it, but we haven't really launched it or raised an awareness, and I think we should be doing now. So we're going to run a little campaign, and we're going to, hopefully, I've written to Janet and Hilda to find out how we can get our name on the TUCAN charter, because I don't think Royal College of Midwives is on there. So we're going to build a campaign now around this and link it with the issues that we've been having in the workplace of occupational exposure to nitrous oxide. And our members are breathing that in amongst other things that they might be breathing in, and just raising awareness for them to start to think about this, and then link it in with some work that we might want to do with the with Helen Ray about Green Baby and things like that. It's our members are the first people who are key to meet families in the community at the start of the new baby's life and get people thinking differently. So it all interlinks. So we're going to, Gusty got in touch with me, and we're going to do something like that around a little campaign. So thank you. And I think this video will be really good for us to use. And we're going to try and set up a little webinar as well. So probably be contacting you or anybody else who'd like to contribute, and perhaps have a bit of a session online for our reps, our members.
That's great, Leslie. Yeah, definitely. We'll put your logo on the charter along with the trade unions.
Thanks.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments anybody wants to make? I mean, I can see in the chat that people have found it useful. I've been down to Unite Safety Reps meeting yesterday, and there was a couple of reps there from Eurostar who are concerned about the ventilation and the heat and everything else. But I was talking to them about monitoring. It's one of the things I think that clearly comes out of what Hilda's talked about, but the film as well, is this making the invisible visible. How do we know what we're breathing in, and how is that impacting on our health? And so, they were really interested in seeing how they could challenge their employer on the conditions that they were working in, and having that monitoring will probably be a first step in that. Anything else?
A couple of other quick observations about it. I think, it could serve as a useful resource where you're going to be engaging in discussions around, climate adaptation issues. I mean, you mentioned extreme heat, Janet, and it does seem to me is that this is something which is increasingly coming up as an issue. I mean, I've done quite a few meetings recently where there has been this combined sessions around extreme heat and air pollution, and of course they are linked. Where you get extreme heat, you get this urban heat island effect, and it can lead to build up of ozone, which of course is a major pollutant, as well as other things. So there is a real connection between the two, and I think that hopefully it will stimulate some ideas about how union reps, whether in the workplace or, as I say, at a community level, where they might be engaging with their local authorities around their climate adaptation plans. And, it's really a question of, if you've got the capacity, making sure you get your voice heard on this, because I think, particularly with things like commercial cooking, it's a big thing now in a lot of local authorities. They're really concerned about it. And in fact, it's recently the City of London have brought out their air quality action plan, and they highlight the fact that commercial cooking is one of the biggest areas of concern in terms of, the percentage of pollutants that it ends up being responsible for within that geographical area. So yeah, we'll obviously keep you posted on any developments with it, but yeah, good luck with it, and any further feedback, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Graham. Leslie, if you want to come back in.
Yeah, just quickly, another area that there's been a big concern recently around the health issues is the ambulances parked outside the waiting outside accident and emergency areas, and they're quite often waiting underneath sheltered areas. They've got their engines running because they've got to keep them warm because the patients are still inside. And then there's the build-up of the exhaust fumes for people who are stood in those areas. And I know there's been a lot of discussions around that amongst the ambulance service. I don't know. This is something that their unions could get in touch with as well. I suppose it's useful for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you. Hilda, do you want to come back on that or anything else? No. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to raise before we finish? No. Well, thank you very much for your attending tonight. Even though there was distractions from football, it's really good that you've managed to come. We will have the recording available on the Facebook page that we have with all our podcasts on, and I'll circulate the links to it as well, and then the film and the links to the documents as well. Thank you so much, Hilda, for taking us through that document. That's really helpful, and it's good to have it on recorded for us to share that as well. And thanks very much for the film, Graham, and the work that you're doing. And we look forward to the new document that you're producing, especially after the election. So we'll see. So thank you very much. See you. Bye-bye, everyone. Yes.
Janet, should Graham, Hilda, Janet and Mick just hang about and have a quick chat for 2 minutes?
Yes.
Is that all right, Graham?